today we're going to talk about something that maybe you don't hear as often, which is not just about asset allocation, but asset location, so to speak, where they're being held and why they're being held where they are. We're going to talk a lot about tax treatment, different levers when we think through cash flow, and what options are available. So let's go ahead and dive in. What do you gentlemen think of when I say asset location versus just asset allocation?
Well, for me, the first thing comes to mind is how quickly do you need it? Remember, liquidity means I need it now.
Yeah. Yeah. My first thought when you said location was like the safe at home. Like, is that what we're
Right.
talking about? Like,
Like a
what?
physical, like, are we talking about like banking options?
Yeah.
Like, are we
Yeah. What,
talking
what
about
state is the bank in? Yeah.
what does she mean? But
Yeah.
yeah,
And I think when you say location, what occurs to me when we're talking about today is what type of account is it in? Is it
yes,
in a qualified IRA account or a 401k account? Is it in actual physical cash? Yeah, like, is it at your house? Is it in a traditional kind of taxable brokerage account? Like what type of account are you holding these funds in?
yeah,
Because for us that impacts the investment strategy. And I think a lot of people don't think about this. To your comment, Laura, I think a lot of people are thinking, how much bonds to equity should I hold? Well, that's like very broad level. Then, okay, well,
right.
should I have mid-market equities, small cap equities? Right? You start to get more granular. But a whole separate conversation is not just what should my asset mix be, but what different types of tax treatment accounts should I have to be efficient?
Right, right. Pre-tax, after tax. You want to talk about, I mentioned that term lever, which is something that we utilize a lot when we're talking about retirement planning because you've got multiple different sources of cash flow, but it can be utilized at other seasons of life as well. Where are you drawing income and how tax efficient is it? And then you're, in addition, talking about specific assets have different tax treatment. How and where do you hold those to optimize your tax strategy? So let's just talk broad based to make sure we're all kind of, our listeners are starting kind of on the same playing field, which is just to talk about various tax treatment of different types of holdings. So if it's in what Jeremiah references a qualified account, or there was pre-tax dollars that went into the account at some point in the future, when you're going to take a distribution from that account, it's going to be considered and taxed as earned income. And if you take it before the age of 59 and a half, there might be some additional penalties depending on what your planned use is for those funds. So when we think about tax efficiency, that's kind of your highest layer of potential taxes on that earned income. Another one would be what we consider capital gains. So if it's if it's an investment asset, so there was after tax dollars put into some type of investment. We'll just talk simplistically about if it was put into some stock holdings. So you pay $5 for whatever stock it is, and then you go to cash that out in the future. The difference in the gain, hopefully, or loss is what we consider a capital gain or capital loss, and that's taxed accordingly. And there's a different tax schedule that applies to those. So that's when you use after-tax money to utilize for investment. And then there's some that can have tax exempt income, and that's in very specific situations as well. Do either one of you want to give an example of a tax exempt income?
Well, again, tax exempt is municipal bonds, and you're not paying any taxes on that, and the income that keeps coming in. Now, again, remember, an asset can go up or down in value. So let's say you have a bond and you're getting income off of that bond. Let's say it's municipal bond, and you're thinking, oh, I can sell the bond and I can get additional revenue from it. Well, if it went up in value when you sell it, you could be on a municipal bond, you could pay long-term capital gains on that. Depends if you've held it for at least a year and a day. If it goes down, you could have a loss. So the timing of that asset is really critical. And if you've got a lot of assets, a lot of money, then you have to be very careful about what you do with that to get that tax exempt.
Even zooming out just a little bit, a municipal bond, as I think a lot of people know, if you hold it in the state that you live in, you usually don't have to pay federal taxes or state taxes on that income, which is great. Muni bonds generally pay less than similar corporate bonds. And so you're kind of taking a deduction in the interest rate you're getting, but you're getting it tax free. Your 401k isn't taxable in that same way. And so you're kind of taking a hit on your interest rate, but you're not getting the benefits of the muni bond. And that's, I think, a lot of what we're talking about today is where you hold your assets, what type of account can, one, it can dictate whether or not you're getting the full benefit of it. But two, you can actually go the next level of be strategic. So for example,
Mhm.
what we do is sometimes we'll do what's called householding, meaning one account has all the growth assets in it no income coming out. It's just all capital gains. We just want that one to grow. And it maybe is too risky for what the client needs overall. But we also have a second account that's like a qualified account. We have all the stable income producing assets in that one. So when you look at them together, it's the perfect mix and it really serves the client well as far as the risk they can take on. But we're being strategic in which asset is held in which account. And that's, I think, the crux of what we're kind of talking about.
Just to comment on that or to add to your illustration. After tax rate of return, corporate versus municipal versus government bonds, there's a calculation based upon your rate, your tax bracket, and what your after tax return is. So you want to look at that because there's effects that people have based on the maturity, the interest rate, the quality of the bond. There's all these factors that go into it,
You got
right?
to compare apples to apples. So if you're
Right.
just looking at the return, it's actually not the accurate way to look at it because you have to take the tax treatment into play to say net what ends up in your pocket, right? So if you can apply, there's calculations that you can do to apply the tax rate and then compare apples to apples. So yeah, and I think just for our listeners too, like this is not uncommon to hold a variety of different accounts and investments. And you may arrive at a certain point in your life and be like, I've got multiple custodians, I've got previous employers where I've got, 401k accounts. And a lot of the work that we do right in the beginning is like basic account organization, trying to consolidate your pre tax funds per person, try to consolidate your after tax investment account all together. You might have one or two accounts depending on, dad's initial question, which is like, what's the purpose? When do you need these funds? So the investment time horizon. Does that belong in a joint account or a trust account, right? Roth accounts, right? So they each have kind of different tax treatments, but what we like to do is try to bring them all together and consolidate them so there's kind of an organized account structure because it can get really confusing, especially those who have had several different employers or different investments over their lifetime, private placement investments, real estate investments, et cetera. It can get so a lot of the work that we do in the beginning is organization. And sometimes it's just really helpful to see it in the dashboard all in one place. Okay. And how do we start
Right.
to group these accounts together? And we talk about investment strategy from kind of like a waterfall perspective, like what goes into account A, B, C, D, et cetera. So just organizing.
Yeah, I think it's so great. I think there's some value in some clients really like that. As we go through that, they're in it with us. Others, they just kind of come with, hey, here's all my accounts. I don't know what they're doing.
And when you break it apart and show them, you can see their eyes kind of glaze over. They're not holding on to the information in the way that you would like for them to hold on to it. So we have to make sure that the interpretation of that they fully understand, you know, this is why this account exists. And then we'll allocate more to it or take some out of it as time goes by. That's our job is to do not only cash balancing, but also asset balances based upon what your goals are.
Yeah. And this to me, this is where this gets fun because as we start working with a client, we bring in the accounts, we organize them, and we kind of deal with any things that shouldn't be there. If they had a municipal bond in their 401k, okay, we got to clean that up. And that's step one. Step two then becomes, okay, what's the purpose of these funds? Where are we headed? And that's when we do the holistic planning. Then it becomes saying, okay, what can we do now to improve this? And the other layer I'll toss in there just as a lawyer is when you inherit these accounts, they all have a different inheritance structure as well. Things like
Mm-hmm.
401ks, all those taxes survive to the next generation. But a normal taxable account at the death, all those taxes will wipe away and they come to the next generation, generally tax free. And so, all this comes into play. And for a listener, it might feel overwhelming. There's a lot here. For someone who's doing this every day, like this is the fun work we do. We dig in, we get it organized, we get it structured, we deal with any negative aspects, get it kind of neutral. And then we start
Hmm.
saying, how do we add value here? And that to me is the fun part.
Yeah, absolutely. We just got off the phone with a client who was talking about needing some funds. And it wasn't, do I have enough funds? That wasn't the conversation. It was, where do I pull these? What's the strategic lever I can utilize to get these funds in the tax efficient way? And so it was really interesting, right? We could present like one, two, three different options to consider. They all had different pros and cons and ultimately arrive at our recommendation. Obviously, it lands in the client's hands to make the decision ultimately. But, I know, Dad, you said some clients' eyes glaze over. Our eyes might light up because we kind of see the puzzle pieces all coming together and the strategy behind it. So some of these minor tune ups can prove beneficial over multiple
Sure.
years.
Yep. Well, I'll pivot just slightly. I think we see on a regular basis people coming in and they have this sentiment to say, I want to keep some of my assets with this advisor, and some of the assets I want to manage myself, and some of the assets I want to manage with that advisor. And these ones no one should touch because they came from some other source. It's not an uncommon story that we hear, and it's not wrong or bad. Everyone can manage the money as they feel appropriate. But what I think they're missing, they're not realizing, is each one of those advisors kind of has to manage their small piece of the pie based on that limited piece of information. Based on these one accounts or two accounts I have, I need to set up the best portfolio. And they may have, in essence, the exact same portfolio or very similar portfolios all across different advisors, not realizing that one, they may be over risked or under risked because no one knows about each other. But the bigger pieces too is that they're not able to be strategic to say, let's put your slow growing assets in this type of account and your fast growing assets in this type of account. They just don't have that level of visibility. And so, of course, if someone, has to develop trust with an advisor, and Laura, you say on a regular basis that you can't microwave trust. It takes time, it takes experience, and that's important to develop that. But if someone never takes the time to develop that with an advisor, they're really limiting themselves to being served in real minor ways by each advisor.
Mhm.
Whereas if they find an advisor that has the resources they need, has the team they need, and they can develop that trust, that advisor then has the opportunity to serve them in essence, to a higher standard, to a higher level, by being able to have
Mhm.
the full picture and to control. Hey, we need to hold these here and hold those there. I think it's a great testament of people who find an advisor that has the runway, the skill set they need. They develop that trust, and then they really lean in and allow that advisor to provide all that value to them.
Yeah, I think I compare that to going in and seeing your physician, and there's nothing wrong with you, but the physician will take blood, they'll take all the analysis, maybe run you through an EKG and such as that. I'm a big believer in preventative care and being ahead of a major event. So if you can avoid an event by taking small changes right now or just monitoring what's going on, all of a sudden there's a difference in the outcome. And that's what we do. We sit down and talk with the client and we make sure that we understand what their household is going through at that particular moment. But we don't want to be surprised. We don't want to be surprised by not preparing for that. And sometimes there's a situation where you just have to make adjustments and you modify on the run. But in the vast majority of the cases, what we do is we understand all the details all along the way.
Mhm.
There'll be some
Mhm.
adjustment, but we'll get through it. And
Mhm.
you take away the worry, but you don't want to go, oh my goodness, I didn't see that coming. You don't want to have the expression in your face and your response to the client saying, oh, you're heading over the cliff.
Mhm.
Well, that's not what they want to hear from you. And for sure, we don't want to be at that end telling them that. So going back to your point, Jeremiah, I want to gather that facts and that information as much as I can. That's why we go through the detail.
Yeah, and for some, this might be kind of a mindset shift. I mean, some people, when they apply diversification of their portfolio, they're also thinking about different asset managers and they're evaluating the
Mm.
investment managers just on performance. And that happens often. We meet with a new client, and what we ask is for something different. I often utilize the illustration if somebody were to walk through our door and say, hey, I've got $1 million. Could you invest it for me? Right away, the answer is no. And I don't know how many investment managers would answer in the same way. Sure, no problem. I've got a good strategy for you. I'll get you a great return. My answer is no, because I need to know what purpose that money needs to serve for you. And so, from my perspective, from our perspective, is that the ultimate successful financial plan means that the funds that you've been given or earned are utilized in such a way to support the life that you're aiming for or the goals that you have. And so if we're just being evaluated as investment managers, and furthermore, just being evaluated on overall performance, that's not really a game that I want to play, nor are we structured in such a way to play that, right? We want to be the quarterback. We want to see the whole. That's why we call our planning process holistic, not just your investment brokerage accounts and your retirement accounts. We want to take a look at your real estate investment portfolio. We want to take a look at your debt and your repayment structure there, your insurance. We want to look at the whole and how it all fits together. And I think that's so critical because to our listeners and to many people out there, as you're evaluating different investment managers and you walk into different, custodians, it can be large houses, can be small boutique investment houses. everyone has a different incentive and a different motivation, and it's good to hear and have them expose openly what is their motivation. We talk a lot about that fiduciary standard. We're going to make a recommendation in our client's best interest. That's easy to say. How does it actually play out? And how many people say that they're fiduciaries, but are they really applying their recommendations in such a way that it's in your best interest, truly? And so that's just something for our listeners to kind of, I guess, keep your spidey sense
Yeah,
high when you're looking at different investment managers.
just to add on top of that, we don't look at a client, prospect, let's put it that way, who comes in the door and asks us some basic questions. We don't evaluate whether or not we want that client based on the income that we would make. What we want to do is what value can we add, and will they allow us to be holistic in our approach and provide total, all-encompassing service to that outcome. And if they're saying, no, well, I'll give you this and I'll handle this when I got somebody over here, we don't want that client. I mean, it's a recipe for disaster, because they're becoming the driver. They're becoming the captain of their own ship. I don't know about anybody else, but I don't want to be just a part of knowing what direction we're going to go. Because if the storm is in front of us, I want to know, do I go forward or do I divert one way or the other to avoid the calamity or the rough waters that are in
Hmm.
front of us?
Hmm.
And you got to have the whole picture at that point.
Yeah. And to no fault, some people just aren't ready to relinquish,
Yeah.
ownership. And that's just a different type of relationship. There are some that truly enjoy overseeing their finances, or it's worked for them up until now. They may not be ready to have a relationship where they really give over that level of participation or knowledge of everything. But that's kind of the relationship that we're up to, that we want to have from our clients, where I like to consider us a quarterback. We've been called a coach, right? An advisor, therapist adjacent. I mean, pick whatever title you like to.
Right. Well, some of my favorites too is when we can sit down with a client and explain to them, hey, we made these changes in your accounts and this is why. And they're tracking, they're with it, they're engaged, and they say, wow, I really appreciate that. That was great. And they return to living their life, running their business, building what they're building. So they know, hey, there's trust, there's confidence. Any questions or details they want to know, it's all available. But they're not disengaged, but they are utilizing us as a resource so we can maximize what they're building, where they're going. Often is the best relationship we find with clients is when they're engaged, they have big dreams, they have big goals, and they need a team to come alongside them to help them get there. And to me, that's a powerful moment when you bring knowledge and experience alongside someone who can be freed from that financial concern and knowing that they have a team. They're in good hands. They're on track. Let's keep moving
Mhm.
forward. It's some good motivation.
Maybe the last couple of minutes too, I'm just thinking of the illustration. We had a client we met with this last week, but here he is on the cusp of retirement because he's about ready to sell his business. Jeremiah from the legal side is helping him with a transaction. He's got inherited assets that he anticipates. He's got some complicated trust structures. He's got his wife retiring who has pension funds, multiple sources of cash flow planning, and varied tax treatment. And he'd ask a question, here or there.
Yeah. It was great to see him as a breath of fresh air because the last 40 years, he's managed his own accounts. He's figured out his taxes. He's been doing this. And so it's not that he's not able to, it's just that he's able to finally say, oh, like you can do this at a different level than I was. I don't have to worry about that. And it's like a breath of fresh air. But too, we're excited to see what he's looking at for the future. He just made a comment. He's like, I'm thinking about things, for my wife and my family and what do I want to be involved in. I was never thinking of before because there just wasn't that space in his brain. It was tied up with all these other financial worries. So yeah, he's been a great client generally, but also in this moment, to be able to help him transition to the next season of life. It's fantastic.
Yeah, and find a place to ask all of his questions. Typically within a household, there's one person that's sort of commandeering or steering the ship when it comes to finances. And I think, Jeremiah, you've made this comment on several occasions. It can get a little lonely, and there's so much information out there. And you might ask for some advice from a friend of yours, and who knows what sort of resource they're looking into or what website they've been on or what, and so, I love being a place where our clients can ask all the questions, right? From the most menial, as they would consider it, to the most complex. And you know what? If we don't know the answer right away, we'll go find it for you, right? And come back and talk about it. And so I love being that resource because I love questions. So
Yeah.
keep them
But you're
coming.
but you're also a problem solver.
Right, right.
You're looking for
We
the
get to be
problem,
problem solvers. That's true.
whether small or large. Our job is to make sure that that problem is taken away or reduced to its least amount of impact.
Yep,
Yep. That's
absolutely. So
good.
we've talked a lot of different topics on this episode. We started out with this idea of asset location versus asset allocation. We talked about complex tax treatment and the strategy and how that those little changes now can actually have a benefit on your portfolio. But we really ended talking about the value of having a relationship with a financial advisor who truly has kind of your interest and the whole control panel in front of them to be able to help you make strategic decisions for your futures. If you need that resource in your life, come talk to us at Tricord. We'd love to get to know you.
Until next week, folks, may you grow in wisdom and knowledge. Thank you for listening.
We have a few more things to let you know about before we go. Podcast reviews really help us to serve more people and get this information into the hands of the people who need it. Please leave us a review. Even if it's not 5 stars, we welcome the feedback.
And we invite you to let us know what topics you would like to hear more about, or what would benefit the people in your life who you're closest to. We have more resources online. Those resources are designed to help you share this great information easily with people in your life. To access those resources, please visit tricordadvisors.com.
Often we hear from clients that they wish they had talked to us sooner. If that's you, we'd be thrilled to see how financial planning can benefit your life. Email us at contact@tricordadvisors.com or simply click on the link in the show notes.
We love creating content that's useful, resourceful, and maybe even a little entertaining. We want to make this mega universe of financial topics and advice applicable and helpful to your life.
Remember, at Tricord Advisors, we are your future's best ally.